Hey guys, we're back with the Bandai rx-78-2 Gundam entry-level kit. We're going to take a look at our progress so far, and also take a look at removing some seam lines. This kit overall is an excellent kit for what it is. Really is an entry-level kit, but for a beginner kit it really is pretty nice and it goes together really well. So let's take a look. Bandai overall has done an excellent job with hiding the panel lines on this kit. The worst that I've seen so far are here on the legs, the front and rear panel line. It's when it's all together and probably after you paint it, it may not be too visible, but it's sort of bugging me. So I'm just going to show you what I do about that. This is the leg that I previously did a little work on. Now the panel line from here to here I'm not concerned with, as that's going to be covered by a shield guard, a knee guard. So I'm not that concerned with it there. What I was concerned about was the line here going around the front of the leg and the rear of the leg. As you can see, I've totally evened that out, filled it in, smoothed it out. You can still see the little remnants of it, but that'll be gone once we put a little primer on this thing. So let me show you what the difference is. Let's see if we can make it out on the camera here. Yeah, you can see the seam on this leg here is extremely visible. Well, to me anyway. While on the other leg it's almost completely gone. And once you put some primer on it, you won't even know that it's there. Now let's take a look at the back of the leg. Again, almost invisible here, while on the untreated leg here, it's just staring at you. So let me show you what I do about that. Now, first thing that I like to do is I take some of this Tamiya extra thin cement. I like using it because it actually melts and fuses the plastic together, so that basically it becomes one part. So I just run it right into the seam, let the capillary reaction just suck it right into the seam, give it a little squeeze there just so that as it melts the plastic, you make sure that it's just mushing itself together. And it'll also give you a ridge to work with when you're smoothing it out, as I'll show you in just a bit. This is the quick setting glue, so it dries very quick, evaporates quicker, so you don't have too much residue to deal with. Now we're going to work on the front. Basically just run it right into the seam. Don't worry about it getting on the surface of your project that you're going to be sanding all of that down and smoothing it out. Give it a nice squeeze. And sometimes give it more than one coat just to make sure that it all gets in there. Gives it a nice melt. So basically what you're doing is you're fusing it together to make it one complete part, not two separate parts. Okay, now we're going to set that aside for a second just to dry. Okay, now that we've given it a little bit of time just to dry and melt together, what I like to do is I go over it with my hobby knife and I just kind of remove the first ridge of that plastic that's fused together. Now this, what it's going to do is just remove that upper seam and get to just below the surface where the plastic is basically already melted together. And you're going to be scarring up the plastic a little bit, but that's okay because we're going to be sanding that smooth in the next step. But what we want is to get rid of the seam on the surface and just get to the fused plastic underneath it. And you're only going to be taking off just a little bit of material on the surface. It's not really going to cause any harm to the project. As you'll see, when we start sanding. And even if the plastic is still a little soft from the melting procedure, sometimes that works to your benefit. Alright, so there we go. Now we're going to hit it with the sanding stick. And as you can see, our seam is slowly disappearing. Okay, let's take a close-up look here. You can see there, that seam on the calf of the leg is almost completely gone. So we're just going to continue to sand down. And I'm doing this in real time here so that you guys can see exactly how long this is going to take. The kit is actually really well made, and if you wanted to leave it with the seams, you really could. I've seen videos of guys who eliminate the seams and then scribe all of their own seam lines and all of their own panel lines into these kits. Now I'm not going to do that, as I'm going to see if I can create what I want to call a realistic anime look. So try and get it to give the appearance of the animation mobile suit without only using paint. And I'm a huge fan of the original Gundam movie. And this is what I'm trying to replicate with this one. And there we go. You see there, the seam is pretty much gone. It's almost just one solid piece of plastic now. Then what I do is I clean up with a Tamiya sanding sponge, 3000 grit, and that's just to smooth the plastic out and eliminate as many of the scratch marks from the sanding stick as I can. This is basically the finishing touch on your sanding. And luckily this kit is so well made that it's very minimal the amount of work you'll be doing to it to clean it up. The precision in which they engineer their kits is amazing. Okay, there we go. I think this seam is completely gone. As you can see, that didn't take very long at all. Now we're going to take care of the front. So you see, all I do is remove the excess material with the hobby knife. That's just to get rid of all of the heavy stuff that we would have to spend all the time sanding through. Basically, using the hobby knife just speeds things up. It doesn't necessarily something you have to do, but it does just speed up all of the work you're going to be doing to smooth this out. Now this kit, they also say you need no tools. I would personally recommend a nipper at least to doing this, because apparently these gates on the runners are made so that you can just pop them off using your fingers, but that still leaves nubs on the part, which you would have to clean up. So I prefer just doing it with the nippers, as that will remove for the most part the need to clean up all the nubs on from these screws and from the gates. There we go. There we go. That pretty much smooths it out. And now we're going to hit it with sanding sponge. This is a 3000 grit sanding sponge. That is basically all it's doing. It's just cleaning up and polishing out the plastic. And giving us a smooth surface to paint on. Now, you could build this kit without painting, but the white plastic has sort of a greenish tint, which is probably, if you look at the original anime, that greenish tint is probably close to what the anime appears to be on screen, even though it's supposed to be white. Now, interesting bit of information about Gundam is that the robots were never intended originally to have these bright colors. That was something that was kind of forced on them by Bandai, because in order to make one of these programs back in the day when this was airing, you needed to be able to sell toys to go with it. And the Gundams were supposedly really have originally very muted colors, military colors. And that was changed when the toy manufacturers decided they would only pay for it if there was something they could sell to make money with. So that's why we have the RX-78 with very bright colors, which really doesn't make any sense if it's going into combat. But let's see, I got a few marks here that I want to get rid of, so we're going to go back with a little bit of heavier sanding here using our sanding stick. The sanding stick, I think, is about 300 grit. So the original story of Gundam was supposed to tell the story of war. And war is not a fun place to be. Even though it is an anime, he wanted to tell a serious story about the cost of war. And in order to get it made, he kind of had to alter his original vision and brighten the colors up. Now what I'm doing is building this Gundam more along the lines of his original vision in the 70s. Which is why I'm going to have all the colors be muted. There will be some weathering. Now, I'm no Gundam expert. I am a fan. I'm not really well up on all the newer Gundam. As I stated in the last video, Gundam seems to have been transformed into a super robot type of genre, which is what they tried not to be in their original iteration. And here we go. Here you can see the seams are all gone now. That is going to look nice once it's painted. The seam on the top, I don't really worry about this, is the knee guard. That snaps right into place there. And that will cover that seam. So that would probably have to be, I would recommend putting a dab of glue on, as it does sit snugly on there. The other one is a little looser. But just so that you don't take any chance on losing it, just a little dab of glue, which will be done after I paint the part. So there we go. Our seam is gone. And we talked a little bit about the history of Gundam. So next thing we have to do is start going to paint. We're going to start painting the first batch of parts. We have them all here. We're ready to go. So we're going to start with the first batch of parts, and that will get us on our way. Oh, but before that, let me talk about a couple of these pieces here. This is part of the genius of Bandai. Wherever they could, they hid the seam lines for the parts within the part. This side here is a separate piece from this side. So instead of putting a line right down the middle and splitting this part in half, this piece is one half, while the other center and this side are all one other piece. So they just snap together, and that hides the seam line right there, so that there will be no need for any sort of cleaning up on this part. On this part here, they use the panel line as their seam. If you can make that out there, let's see if we can. They use the panel line there as a seam for this part, so that the two halves snap together right on the panel line, which hides the seam in the panel line, which is pretty ingenious of them. Saves you a lot of work. The only place they couldn't were on the legs, and that is why we had to do our work there on the legs. Alright guys, I'm going to end that one there. Just wanted to show you a little bit of seam removal. You can see it's really not that difficult. And now we're going to prep a couple more parts and head off to paint. So the next time when we come back, we'll be in paint, and I'll show you what my plans are for this. Alright guys, remember, like, give a thumbs up, subscribe. I know a lot of guys who watch, you don't subscribe, but if you do, you get notifications on all the new episodes, and if you're interested in following this project along, it'll automatically let you know. Also, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. So subscribe, it really helps us out a lot. I can see now I'm getting closer and closer to 500 subscribers. I'm really happy about that. I want to thank all my new subscribers. You guys are the reason I do this. I really enjoy sharing my builds with you, and I will continue to do so as long as you guys want me to do it. So as soon as we hit 500, I promised you guys a long time ago in one of my other videos, I'll give you guys a tour of my complete stash. Got a lot of interesting things in there from the 80s going on until today, and I think you might find it interesting. So all we gotta do is hit that magic 500 number, and we get the stash tour. Alright guys, I will see you on the next one.